Welcome to Love What Must Be Done, camping edition. We're camping and the littles are napping and Daddy's on an adventure in the creek with the big kids. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to do a little video in response to a question one of the sweet viewers asked in response to actually the Disciplining in Love video. What do you do when you have an almost 2-year-old, or I'm just going to generalize toddler, who you want to discipline, but they're throwing a tantrum, and so you're trying to calmly talk to them and they are just not, you can't get through to them because they're throwing this huge out of control fit, which anyone with a toddler probably has experienced this. I have many times. There are a few things that we have done to help our little ones through these times and to train them through it. And it's looked a little bit different for each child. So understand that this is just kind of what works for us, for different children, and something different may work for you. Pray about it, seek the wisdom of God's word and God's people as you try to work through this with your own kiddos. But these are just a few things that have worked for us. First, I'm going to go through a few things that are probably a little less fruitful, maybe that I wouldn't recommend doing. Number one, I would not recommend ignoring it. We want to say, oh, they're just kids throw tantrums. Absolutely, that's right, they are kids, and kids do throw tantrums. But it's because of sin nature. As believers, we have to realize that that's a result of the fall, and so really everything we do in our natural state is going to be pretty negative. That doesn't mean that we just let those behaviors be manifest in us or in our children. So ignoring it, probably not the best option. Another thing that I have seen recommended is to really affirm that child's behavior. Like, oh, Susie, I see you're mad. You are so angry. Oh, let's talk about how angry you are. I wouldn't do that because I don't feel like biblically we should be just affirming anger. We do get angry, and maybe it initially started as hurt feelings or something like that, but the tantrum itself, we need to remember, is usually a result of anger, so we need to address it as such. So things that we have done, and these are not the only options by any means, and maybe not even the best option, so if you have any ideas, I would love to get some conversation down in the comments of what has helped you and your littles. But things that have worked for us. For our first son, he started this thing when he was probably a little under 2, where he would start, anything that he didn't want to do, that I was trying to get him to do, he would kind of start screaming, throwing the big fit, throwing his body on the floor, flailing around. It was like the end of his little world. And I talked to a very wise mom of 8 kiddos, and she said, it's really not fun to put on a show when you don't have an audience. And while it may not have only been attention that he was seeking, he was definitely trying to elicit a response from me, probably trying to get me to just give in to, his every women fancy, or to back off and not follow through with something that was required of it. So even as sweet little almost 2-year-olds, our kiddos can be master manipulators. That's just our sin nature. So it was very helpful for him. Very calmly, before I started feeling anxious, I would keep my emotions under control, not to respond to his sin with more sin. I would go and scoop that cutie up and calmly take him to his bed, where I would sit him down, and he was screaming usually the whole way, and calmly I would say, you have to regain some self-control. I'm going to be praying for you to do that. And sometimes I would pray with him even if he was screaming. Sometimes I would just leave and pray for him while I was out of the room. And then I would say, I'm going to close your door. And he could open his door at this time. So if your child can't, then don't close the door. But I would close the door so he was alone. There's a fly buzzing around my head. And then I would say, when you have self-control, then you come find mommy. And then we'll talk about what has you so upset. Now, if it was something that he was required to do and that's just what he was upset about, then usually by the time he was calm and we could talk through it, even in his little 1-year-old, 2-year-old vocabulary, then he was calm enough then that we could still go and I would still follow through and have him do the thing that I was requiring of him. And in addition to going back to the original issue, we would also address the anger in his heart with the temper tantrum, because I don't know about you guys, but even as an adult, I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I have like mommy tantrums. It's not something that goes away as an adult, that temptation to be angry and to throw a fit, but it just looks different as an adult. So to try to get those habits when we're young can give us an arsenal of tools to draw from as adults. Learning to calm down when we're younger helps us to stay calm as adults. So that is my goal with my kids, and for him it worked really well that way. Even now, if I sense that tensions are rising, I'm getting anxious about something, I may be getting angry about something, to step away, and now as a believer, read the Bible, pray, do something like that, but to take a few minutes of a pause away, not a timeout per se, but just a pause where I can regain composure, can be so helpful in coming out with a new attitude. Sometimes I go to my own room and I just take a few minutes, and then I come out and I feel refreshed and I have a better perspective on what's going on. Honeybee. So that really worked well for him. There were times, same child, where he would flail a lot, and so it depended on the setting. When we were in a safe setting and he was doing that kind of thing, sometimes we would just restrain him gently but firmly, so that he wasn't flailing and he could see, and you're going to have to control your body. So that was another thing we did. Now, as an almost 6-year-old, I know that whenever he's in the midst of he did something and now maybe he's requiring discipline for it, I know that he doesn't like when I am touching him. He wants a little space, and I'm okay with that. I just let him stand just a few feet from me and make him look at me in the eye, and we always say stand like a man, and so then we'll talk about it like that, and then after everything's done, then we do the hug. This little honeybee just wants to join the conversation. Anyway, that has worked for him, and I know that he does like a little more space now, so that's kind of what we have come to with him during discipline. With our second child, she's a little less predictable. She's a little less structured in general, and so sometimes sending her off to calm down on her own works. Most of the time it does, in fact. She'll come out and she'll say, I have self-control, and she's ready to talk. Sometimes it takes a little longer for her. It might take several minutes for her to calm down, and she actually might sit on the bed and scream, and sometimes I go in and address it. This is probably bad because I don't know exactly how to handle hers, so I'm still working through it, but sometimes I'll go in and address it right away and administer some discipline, depending on how severe I guess the attitude is. Sometimes I just let her cry for a while. Sometimes she falls asleep, but if she does fall asleep, as soon as she wakes up, we still discuss it and we still follow through. For our third child, who's 2 now, the sending him off to his room thing does not work. He needs just very swift discipline, and that's what we do. We just administer swift discipline, and then he usually will start crying a cry of he feels like his feelings have been hurt maybe, but that then opens the door to him being calmer and less angry, and then accepting instruction better. He's more assertive personality in general, so he seems to handle a little more of that authoritative discipline better. He likes and he needs very clear and visible boundaries, knowing who is in submission and who is the head in the situation. The key is, I feel like, getting a child to the point where they're gonna hear your instruction. It's not merely discipline, it's not merely instruction, it's a combination of both. And so that is the goal, using a method that's not sinful to get your child to a place where they're calm enough to listen to you, and you're not just speaking, as Proverbs talks so much about, casting pearls before swine. The foolish man does not tend to hear wisdom. So to get your child to a place where they're acting calmly and not so foolishly can be really helpful with the whole temper tantrum fit-throwing extravaganza. And then no matter what, to always address the fact that it's not just that you were tired. It's not only that you had your feelings hurt, but those things grew into anger. And anger is always a sin against God. And that's really whose law we are breaking. It's not just mommy's law you're breaking. It's not my instruction. It's God's instruction. And so if we start teaching these things at a young age, and give kids credit for understanding the things. Sometimes we talk about how smart they are when it comes to happy and good things, but then as soon as it comes to bad things, we think, oh, I don't think he understands me when I say stay in your bed. He probably does. There are, of course, exceptions to that, but toddlers in general do understand a lot of what we're saying. So just to address those things and help them find ways to deal with their anger, to control themselves, and that will be fruitful when they become adults. I hear my family coming on back through the creek. Yay! They found an orange and a potato in the creek. And a little water snake. So anyway, we're going to do some exploring around the campground. So I'll be signing off, but I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to learn to love what must be done.